Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential, chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. So today, I actually decided to bring someone back by the name of Jordan Gray. And for those of you that remember, he is the relationship expert. Now, the reason I decided to bring him back was a couple of reasons, but one, we had been chatting offline and he had just broken up with the girl that he was telling us about the first time. And we got into this whole conversation about breakups and how people work through them, etc. And I thought, hey, Jordan, would you mind coming on the podcast and just sharing that? Because I know that thinking about breaking up with someone, trying to figure out whether they're your soulmate or not, all these questions that we deal with, and he has such an expert brain on dealing with it, I thought, hey, why not bring him out here and have that kind of discussion? So in this one, this is one of the most raw and uncut podcasts you'll probably ever hear, but we spoke about how to know if you're dating your soulmate, how to gracefully break up, if there ever was such a thing, I guess, the distinction, reacher and settler, which was very interesting, how to reality test any situation in your life. So stay tuned. This is part one, and make sure you come back for part two, because in part two, I think it gets even more raw, if that's even possible. So enjoy my interview with Jordan Gray, part one. Welcome back, everyone, to another Performance Enhancing Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're probably seeing a familiar face. We have Jordan Gray, the relationship expert, back with us. What's up, brother?
Not too much. Glad to be here. How are you?
Awesome. I'm great. I'm happy to have you. So since blah 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 blah. So since Jordan was here last time, I got a ton of emails. I got messages saying, "Oh my God, that was incredible! I did this with my wife. I did this with my girlfriend," and we touched base probably like a week or so ago, and no, probably more. And you were telling me how you had just gone through the breakup and shared a little bit about the story. So I wanted this, I actually asked Jordan to come back to have what I think will probably be the most impactful conversation that you guys have ever heard inside of relationships. And for those of you that are in relationships or in that gray area, we're going to focus a lot today on communication and personal growth and things like that. So whether you're in a relationship, out of a relationship, or in that gray zone, this is going to be one that you definitely want to take notes on. So Jordan, let's start with where we spoke before, which is you had to do kind of what I call the hardest thing in relationships, which is break up with someone when on paper and to the friends and everyone around you, they'll tell you, hey, she's perfect. You guys are perfect. And then something inside of you still does something and you have to question it. And then you have to end that relationship. So can you just share with people a little bit about what happened prior to that conversation, what you had to go through, what you had to become aware of, so that those that might be in that situation can kind of take note?
Definitely. So yeah, we talked maybe just around 2 weeks ago, and this was a couple days after I had broken up with my girlfriend. And I feel like there's this kind of balance in our awareness between good anxiety and bad anxiety. And I think in any kind of on-purpose relationship, something that I identify as something that's a really good relationship and healthy for us, that allows us to integrate all the stuff we might have disowned about ourselves or wanting to kind of minimize or not face. There's a lot of good anxiety of, I'm taking all these things that I tried to not be or to hide for so many years, and someone is kind of shining a flashlight into like the darker areas of our mind, and really letting us be seen. And that's going to bring with it a host of positive anxiety or, growth anxiety of like starting your first business. It's not the easiest thing for a lot of people. It's, ooh, okay, I'm really putting myself out there. And I think that in entrepreneurship and intimate relationships, these are the two greatest catalyzing forces available to human beings. And so, when people, I'm assuming a large number of people listening or watching this right now, the very on purpose kind of people that lean into that kind of stuff, it can be very confronting. And so, yeah, as you said, when like a few days or weeks prior to that relationship ending, there was this feeling of, there was nothing I wanted to change, but I still felt stuck or anxious or, creatively blocked and just kind of off. And I think that, whether it's a business or relationship, the thing that, threatens to make us feel the most seen, we often demonize that thing first. Because, if that's really my greatest growth opportunity, it makes sense that we'd want to push that away or hide from that as quickly as possible so that our ego or our mask can stay hidden. And I'm going to play small. I'm going to keep my day job. We're going to keep dating people that don't challenge me in the slightest.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely my journey with my girlfriend was, I had this like overwhelming anxiety that I wasn't owning. I wasn't vocalizing it to her, and I let it kind of take over my mindset, and I broke up with her from a very reactionary, hiding mindset. And she is, to this day, one of the strongest women I've ever met, like by a multiple. And she had the strength and self-awareness to be able to see through it even as it was happening, where she basically was like, I don't buy it. Like, I get they're freaking out and that's fine. And if you want to take space, you can take space. But, this isn't the end of us and we both know it.
That's a woman.
I just got literal shivers.
Nice.
About that,
so I want to back up one step, because I think what tends to happen, and through, I guess, coaching people, I've actually had a lot of friends that somehow came to me for relationship advice. Don't ask me why. But one of the things I noticed is, and you pointed to it as well, is something happens. Then something shifts in the mind because of that. And then you kind of start living inside of that relationship, whether it's a withhold. For example, something happened. You didn't say when that thing happened. And then it festers, it builds, and then it turns into us making crazy, irrational, sometimes very stupid and could be ultimately tragic decisions. What did you see now, kind of looking back and analyzing, that you would have done differently? In other words, in that event, because clearly there was something like that, right? With the withhold?
Definitely.
Okay. So what did you see, and how can we use that as an example to train people?
For me, it was, it's specific, but I think that anyone listening has their own unique triggers or defense mechanisms or ways of hiding. And for me personally, it was this feeling of, I'd had some kind of abandonment, emotional trauma earlier in my life that I intuited the lesson of whenever I really let someone in, really let someone see me, it can only lead to them, abandoning me quickly overnight with like disgust and like adding shame and like just emotional layers of baggage on me. And so when I really started to be with someone that I was like, I'm going to let them in, there's this really cool analogy that I thought of that she and I were talking about a couple of days ago, where, imagine like a mother bird hanging out around her nest, and there's like 3 baby birds, and a bird watcher or a human like starts approaching. The mother bird's going to do crazier and crazier stuff to keep you away from her babies. And, she might like feign having a broken wing, so like, take sympathy, or she might start attacking you. But it's that kind of feeling of, if you're really letting someone in towards your vulnerabilities, you want to, no, like anything but that.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it wasn't so much, it wasn't numbing or going non-communicative. Just like, for me, it registered as anxiety, and all I wanted to do was push hard away. Like anytime that there was this feeling of, I want to want to cry in front of her. I want to have some emotional processing. I want to connect deeper. And like, at least like 20% of my mind wanted to lean in. Most of me, aka my ego, my mask, my shield, wanted to push and go, okay, how do you do anything that isn't you actually leaning in and connecting with her and showing yourself? So what I've done differently is communicate to her, I'm scared shitless right now. What I need to do is let you in and tell you what's happening. What I want to do is to, leave your apartment and never talk to you again.
Wow. It's so amazing to me. We spoke about this the first time we met, but it's so amazing to me that people that train people on certain aspects, everyone expects that your life is going to be you have to be some magician in that world. Mm-hmm. And it's, I'm listening to this and I'm going, what an amazing life experience. It's something that truly anyone that's found a soulmate that I know or found that true love always goes through.
Fear.
There's certain things that we've all experienced in life. I think on the path to finding soulmate, that is one of them. Mm-hmm. And it's funny to me that you are so consciously aware. It's not funny. It's just amazing. You're so consciously aware as you're going through this process. So the way you explain it, it's almost like you're coaching yourself like you would one of your clients.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. And, in psychotherapy, they call it observing ego. Like the ability to look back at yourself as things are happening, which is, basically what, journaling is at the end of the day, looking back and going, oh, like, how did I live today? What did I do? What could I have done differently? Which is an extremely healthy process for anyone of any age. And yeah, I definitely was far from flawless of doing that, observing in the moment. But there were many times where I would sit by myself in my living room, verbalize, okay, what am I experiencing right now? I'd say a bunch of words and I go, okay, if a client came to me and said those words, what would I have them do? And I go, well, I'd have them do this. And I go, damn it, that's of course that's it. But yeah, there's definitely, that idea of whatever someone studies the most, that's what they most want to learn. I think that being a relationship coach is one of the most ironic things that, and similar with therapists. I've met people, we have a mutual friend who's a therapist that does Skype coaching. And there's definitely not a stigma, but almost an expectation of, oh, if you're a therapist and you give people any advice on anything in life, you have to have already, run the gauntlet and you're flawless in that, which is why you're able to pass on wisdom. It's no, often they need all that advice just as much, if not more, than many of their clients.
Yeah. The clients tend to become your mirrors. And so
Totally.
I think you learn a lot in the coaching. I'll sometimes say something to someone when I'm consulting them and I say it and I go, oh shit. And I write it down for myself.
Yeah.
Remember to do that.
That's a good one.
Okay, so you go into this conversation and I want to just teach people this a little bit because you're obviously very well coached or you coach others in having these type of conversations whereby the other person is left complete. You don't literally walk into the room, shit on their head and walk out. I know you were very aware and wanted to do this obviously you're going to hurt the person, but to kind of limit that, yes?
Limit when I broke up with her?
Limit the pain of when you're breaking up with that person.
Yeah, definitely. And there are ways to do that, but I don't want to go into the pretense that I did that flawlessly, because when I did break up with her, it was in a place of I'd been non-communicative about my fear for weeks. So it was like a champagne bottle uncorking where I just went to her and it wasn't done as gracefully as I could have, where I was
so let's talk about how to do it gracefully, because for a lot of people, that is, like I said in the beginning, I think that's one of the scariest conversations. I don't know from a woman's perspective, but I know from a man's perspective, I've had to do it, and it was gut wrenching. And I know there's smart ways to do it and horrible ways to do it. So what are some tips that we can give people if they're in that place where they realize, you know what, she's not the one, he's not the one? How can they go about it?
Can they break up gracefully?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a great title for a book. Break Up Gracefully.
I'd say the first thing that is totally vital and necessary is having many conversations with yourself around it before you actually get into the room.
Okay.
Because I think that you can only break up with someone, in a relatively clean way to the degree that you feel aligned or congruent about it. And if there's even 5% of, oh, I'm probably making a mistake, they'll feel that and they'll never be able to have closure. So you have to know, with a very healthy amount of certainty of, I've really reality tested this in multiple ways. I've talked to friends about it, and I've meditated on it. I've sat with it for hours, for days, and this is a thing that needs to happen for me to feel, my big, scary, deep love, and for them to be loved like they deserve to be. You have to really, own it and sit with it on your end.
Okay.
In terms of the actual action steps of doing it in person, I think that this idea of, it's not me, it's you, or it's not you, it's me, either way, I think that people, not just in breakups, but in life, spend an unnecessary amount of time on, on the blame game of whose fault is any of this? And in anything to do with personal relationships, intimate relationships, relationships of any sort, in my mind, it's impossible to put blame on anything because it's so fluid and there's so many things that you don't have to, take either one of those stances. It can be as simple as, I've really been emotionally checking out lately, and I think that I'm just on the way out of the relationship, and I don't feel like I'm honoring you or myself by staying in it with how I feel. And if they go into bargaining mode or denial or any of the classic stages of loss, you can be there and you can answer questions to the degree that you don't think that they'll do any damage. Like they say, what did I do wrong? You say, well, there's these 10 things. Really, they probably did nothing wrong. It's just if you feel like something's missing for you because they didn't have a certain character trait or lifestyle habit, that doesn't say anything about them. That says something about your preferences.
Yeah.
So again, this idea of blame is, in my mind, completely irrelevant because you not being a match doesn't mean they did anything wrong. Just because I don't like smoking doesn't mean that you have to not smoke in order to be a human that's worthy of being loved.
Yeah.
Someone else will be stoked on that habit, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
That's a bit of a stretch, but you go to the gym 5 days a week and they don't exercise at all. Someone else is going to be stoked that they can go be lazy together, and you'll go find your person.
Well, I'll give you an example that I kind of run into a lot, which is when one person in the relationship takes a certain path. Say they meet at a certain stage of their life, and then one person is, say, an entrepreneur and constantly pursuing business growth, which encapsulate personal growth, right? And so they go into this world where they're transforming all the time, shedding layer. And the other person doesn't really go through that type of process. And then they feel, it could be on both sides. Maybe the person that's developing is kind of looking down and going, well, they're not really coming on the journey with me. Or the other person is standing there looking around going, who the heck is this person? They're so different than when I met them 3-5 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, I agree, it's not necessarily the blame. It's just
different.
They're at a different place.
That's the thing with growth trajectories is even if you met each other in a very similar life stage, if one of you is growing at 5x and the other one's growing at 2x, then at first, it's not that big of a gap. But then eventually, when you're really skyrocketing and they're just crawling, I get that a lot with my entrepreneurial clients. And we might have, or some of the listeners might have heard of the kind of reacher-settler debate of in any relationship, there's a reacher and a settler, or the one up and one down partner. And I don't believe in this much at all. This is made famous by a TV show, How I Met Your Mother. It's in a book called The Passion Paradox by some dude. And
hey guys, I just want to take a quick break here and let you know about our 10-day challenge. All you have to do is head over to SatoriPrime.com/10day, the number 10 day. And in it, we give you a 10-part video series that is absolutely changing lives, and it's completely free. It's a mindset shift in what is possible for you in your life right now. So I just want to read to you what someone has just written me. And they said, what did the 10-day challenge create for me? In summary, a plan of action. A man with a goal and a plan is unstoppable. Your 10-day challenge allowed me to take all that confusion and fear of my situation and see it was a period of transition. I have a plan. I've taken action and I'm implementing. Success is just over the horizon. And that could be the case for you. So head over to SatoriPrime.com/10day, the number 10 day, and grab your 10 free videos today and create a plan of success for you. Now back to the episode.
What I do like about the concept is that I do feel like there's a reacher and settler or one up, one down partner moment to moment or in different areas of life. But I like to picture that the best couples are almost tethered by an elastic band where one might be growing a lot, but then they feel the tension and that kind of bumps up the other one. They go past and then like you're trading spots up, and so you're always close, even if you feel like, oh, I've been doing more growth than they have lately. Well, maybe they've been, taking a more proactive role in raising the kids or in their fitness, whereas you're advancing in business or something else.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty arbitrary and unfair to say, oh, like I'm the one up one because in this very minute area of my life, I'm ahead. It's like, sure, but what half a dozen ways are they kicking your butt? So, playing that comparison game in a relationship, like you were mentioning, where people are kind of both on the growth trajectory, like that's like really asked for, is be with someone that has a similar not just values but lifestyle goals, and this is how we want to live our lives.
Yeah. Do you think that for those couples, okay, well, let's take it back a step. So if one of your clients comes to you and says that that's what they're dealing with, right? Their spouse isn't growing with them, etc. I have my own opinion, but I'm curious, what do you kind of consult them on? How do you get them? Because say their relationship is actually important to them. They're not using it as an excuse to get out. They're saying, this is where we're at. How do I bridge that gap?
And are these ones that are in that elastic band, like step by step, or they're the ones that are 2 and 10?
They're just 2 and 10, and he or she is growing. The other one is kind of stagnating. They see that their lives are kind of in different places, but they're really intentional about staying together. They realize there's this gap, but they're not making it wrong in the sense of this means, I'm going left, you're going right, we need to separate. But they're just saying, okay, there's this gap. What do we do to bridge that gap?
And still, is it in that temporary phase of, like these months has been this way, or our entire relationship has been, you're really not growing?
They think their entire relationship's been that way.
Gotcha. The first thing I do is reality test it and go, okay, is that really true? Or is that just, your mood congruent memory bias right now you feel that way, so you're applying that feeling to your entire relationship, even though it wasn't true in the past.
Yeah.
And this could just be a phase, in which case I'd say, wait through it, talk about it. Don't make your partner wrong and say like, you're really not growing and you have to pick up the slack. But, you're allowed to voice your certain anxiety and just kind of clear that space so it's not stuck only in your head. But if it is, if it's a really anxiety producing gap and they feel like their partner has, inexplicably different goals and values, then I think that is a conversation worth having. Again, first with yourself of, do you really need that in a partner, or do you actually need your partner to be a soft place to fall that encourages you and is your cheerleader? Or because, there's like, do you need a drill sergeant or a cheerleader? Do you want someone that's, if you're prone to going to the gym 5 days a week and you take a day off, do you want a partner that's there to go like, yay, take a day off, come and cuddle me in bed? And is that welcome because, I am allowed to be content and, not only be 100% on all the time? Or do you want a partner that kicks you in the butt and says, don't be lazy, like get out there. I don't care it's 10 p.m., the gym's still open, go. And again, it's a completely personal decision because depending on how much drive, ambition, autonomy someone has, one of those sounds extremely appealing and the other one sounds like a nightmare.
I love that your experience, because you've coached so many people, is showing you that not one answer is right for anyone. So even when I ask you that question, it's like, if you're this type of person, then that's good. If you're do you watch House of Cards?
No.
Okay. So
should I?
It's great. I mean, it's a good show and you can binge it on Netflix, but Frank Underwood is the main character. He's played by Kevin Spacey, and then his wife is, Claire, and I think she's played by Wainwright. Blanking on it, Robin Wainwright or something like that. Jenny from Forrest Gump.
Okay.
And they're aliens. I don't even know how else to explain it. Their relationship is so business focused. Everything that they do, it's almost like an arranged marriage to achieve, in their case, political goals. Their conversations, similar, like you said, with the drill sergeant, that's why it kind of resonated for me. If he talks about, they just had a recent conversation, he's on the phone and he's saying something like, oh, I can't believe I did this. This guy got in my head, And she literally stops him instantly. She goes, Francis, this is not the way you communicate. She goes, stop beating yourself up. I've never heard you be indecisive. Drop it. Stop focusing about what happened in the past and figure out how you're going to fix this in the future. And I just sat back and went, damn. But he loved it, right? That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
That's another guy would be like, oh my God, she doesn't love me. But to them,
Totally.
it's perfect. So I absolutely get that there's no one shoe that fits them all.
No, and it's one of the most common questions that I've gotten through, especially the very entrepreneur focused podcasts, is which one do entrepreneurs need for the most success in their lives and business? Like, do they need the soft place to fall, nurturing encourager to be there and go like, oh, you're doing so well, you're allowed to take weekends off, calm down? Or do they need someone like, that's only going to push them towards their highest good, their highest potential? And no, like never take a moment off, like always be reading. Like, we don't have to have sex this week. You have to like read this book every night in bed. And yeah, I've absolutely seen shining examples of both, of people that really want a drill sergeant and others that need the softness. And I think, again, it's often whatever gap you're most looking to fulfill in yourself. If you're already, overly hard on yourself and perfectionistic and driven, then having another dose of that in a partner, could just lead you to having a heart attack when you're 38 because you don't need more of that energy. Whereas if you need a kick in the butt because you're like, I like running my business, but I like getting drunk at the beach more, then having a partner to, be like that, Francis, like that kind of partner, that can help a lot more depending on what your life goals are.
So let's go back real quick to the breaking up part and having that conversation, because you said something and I'm just curious to dig a little deeper there. You said you've mentioned a few times reality checks where you take your clients through kind of what do you call it? A reality
test.
Reality test. What are some things that people can ask themselves? What are questions that you go through that process with to see, is this real? Am I making this up? Is the relationship always been like this? Is it just something recent, etc.?
So one of the first things that came to mind is there's a columnist, a writer that I think is probably also got a fairly decent presence in the States. His name is Dan Savage. And he talks about this idea of the price of admission. That in any relationship, you will find someone that, society would deem your soulmate or like your person, someone that you could like very easily, readily, excitedly get along with for, many decades, the rest of your life. And he talks about how no matter how amazing and aligned and congruent your partner is, there's always going to be the price of admission. Like, this is the price you have to pay to ride that ride. There's going to be the 1% or 2% or 5% of things that, don't necessarily completely cross your core values or that you hate or resent, but just, like, this isn't my favorite. But in the context of the relationship, it's cute and I like it and I can totally get along with it. So this is the first thing that I kind of reality test my clients is if they come to me and say, I don't know if I should break up with them or not. Am I just, am I crazy? Am I just psyching myself out? That's the first thing I ask is, okay, like, what's been bothering you about them? And if it's something relatively surmountable or insignificant, not just to me, but to them, like, okay, they say, they leave the mayonnaise and the cheese out after they make the sandwich. They just let it, they leave it sitting there. Does it really like register as such a personal insult that it weighs on you for days because maybe acts of service is your love language, and that feels that like every time you walk by the bread that's been left out or the dishes that haven't been done, it feels like that's them not loving me. Which, even with that, I'd say, okay, well, have a conversation with them first, or just do it yourself and get over it.
Yeah.
But that's the first thing I dive into is, what is it really? And if it is something that's much more close to your core values, like, a hyper extrovert that loves socializing realizes after, the first 6 months of dating the person that they were really excited about, oh, I might have overlooked this because I'm so attracted to them, but they're deeply introverted. They don't like going out almost ever. And while I want to have friends over for dinner at least 4 nights a week, they would prefer once a month. Then sure, that could be something that might be too out of alignment for you.
Okay.
So reality test what the issues seem to be. And then of those, I would drill down even further and say, okay, which of these can actually be shifted? Because in any relationship, it's not manipulative. Inevitably, you are going to rub up against each other and become slightly different people, because when two unique people energies match up, like, it's alchemy. Like, you have to change somehow.
Very, very clever. So just to kind of recap for people, take stock of what the actual issue is, the actual event, and then match it up against your core value system, basically.
Yep.
Okay. I like
core
that.
values, lifestyle, life goals. And then of those, which ones are, temporary or invented, or maybe you're just having a rough month because business isn't going well and you're just looking for things to, pick a fight over in your mind, which absolutely happens. As much as we as entrepreneurs trying to face it, it's hard not to have some of your self-esteem or self-worth tied into the success of your business. And if you have a month or a quarter where you're really, tanking, or even if okay, I'm going to shift my monetization strategy and expect less revenue, it can still, to our masculine energy, it can still feel like, I'm having less of an impact. And that's when, we see those things that we're more easily triggered by in our partner, that are usually just things in ourselves that we're projecting onto them because they're available.
So did you go through this process, this reality test, before you approached her?
I did, to a very small kind of confirmation bias degree, because I was so flooded with stress hormones and anxiety. I was just looking for ways to justify, okay, how many reasons can I stock up or write down on a list to justify being able to push away drastically the best woman that's ever happened to me.
It's amazing how we self-sabotage ourselves.
And with the things that that are the best for us, that we want the most. And what's that expression that's many men have finished the race within 100 meters of the finish line. It's always, we're so close and we go, oh no, it's too scary, I can't.
Yeah.
I know so many people that will do so much market research and branding and build their website. And it's so amazing. They take screen grabs and they send it to me. And then it's not live. I haven't hit publish yet. And you're like, what? It's just that last step of, okay, I'm really putting myself out there.
That's when it becomes real.
Yeah. That's when it's out there and it's vulnerable and it can be judged. And that's a huge
Or even they'll do one thing for so long, and then right before they're like, you know what? I've been doing this for so long. Let me just try something new. And if they just did that one other thing for maybe another week, they would see the results. But now, because they weren't seeing results for this long, they just pivot and do something else and miss this massive opportunity. It's almost like they restart the clock over.
And that's the dip in relationships too, is that feeling of, we've been really good for X number of months or years. And now that we feel really happy and content, and I'm used to being, feeding my cells stress hormones and being on edge. Oh, maybe this feels like not growth. It's no, you're allowed to be happy. You don't need to be stressed. But entrepreneurs especially get stuck in that trap of, no, if I'm not on edge, then I'm not growing, which is not true.
Yeah. It's a very innate feeling. Having to consistently grow. So you have this conversation, it ends how it ends. What did you see? Because now, not to break the bubble here, but now they're back together. So after this happens, what occurs in your process that all of a sudden now you go back and say, wow, that was just me being scared shitless, not the actual reality?
For me, I think the thing that stood out to me the fastest was, since I have memory since I was a toddler, I've always been extremely sensitive, very emotional, which makes me great at my job and can be challenging in everyday life. But like for me, it's weird if I don't cry every week, and like even when I'm happy and like life's going on. And so I'm very used to what emotional processing feels like. And in the first week, right after our breakup, I wasn't crying. It didn't feel like I was mourning the relationship. It felt like it was just only pain. Like I just shot myself in the foot and I was like, this just feels like I'm holding myself away from, the medicine or the thing that's good for me. It didn't feel like, okay, like there was no weight off my shoulders. The anxiety didn't go anywhere. If anything, it got worse. I was like, wait, this feels like, that was the thing. I was like, I'm quick to go, okay, is it either my business? Do I have to, take on less clients? Do I have to shift something over here? Or is it a relationship? Because those are the two biggest things that take up most of the time in my life. And so there's this feeling of, okay, I didn't know which one it was. So I had to make a decision on one of them. And by shaking it up, hopefully the anxiety would fall away and I'd feel relief. And so I changed one of them, again, the one that was more scary, because, business is fairly, put in effort, get a result. It's much more predictable than human relationships.
Yes.
In so many ways, which is also why I think, workaholism is so, it's so easy and so addictive, and it's such an easy place to hide. When a relationship is going wrong, we can go into, our man cave, or we can go into just like, I'll just do the thing and get validation from my 1,000 or million clients or, followers. It's a lot easier to have a relationship with 1 million people than it is with one who actually sees you.
A real relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, not a fan base, which they're much easier to please. Tangent. What was the question? Where was it going?
We were talking about what did you realize during that 2 weeks off that had you? So you're talking about the anxiety still remained.
Yeah, the anxiety still remained. I didn't feel like I was mourning the relationship, but just, like I was more anxious. I was more sad. I was like, this feels like I committed to one of the two directions, and this feels like clearly the wrong one. And even stranger is it never felt like we were ever apart. Like we both, the similarities in our entire lives and our backstories is just like, it's creepily aligned. And, when we started talking again after the first 10 days of non-communication, we both had these feelings in different, in our dreams and different experiences that were like, it never felt like we were actually ever apart, even though it was very clear and it's like, we're breaking up. I have to we're not talking. I unfriended her on Facebook, the whole shebang. We came back and had this very clear overarching sense of we could still both feel each other's presence the entire time. And when we started talking again, it was like we never really broke up. Like whenever, it's kind of hard to put into words. But how PG do I have to be on this podcast?
Say it again.
How PG do I have to be on this podcast?
Oh, you can be as rated R as you can possibly be. You can be rated X if you want. Well, we're going to just leave it off here on this nice little cliffhanger. So if you want to find out what rated R comment Jordan is about to tell us, you'll have to just wait for part 2. But I promise you part 2 gets even more raw than this one. So if you've enjoyed this one, make sure you come back to listen to part 2. Until we speak again, have an amazing, amazing day, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to SatoriPrime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.
Did you run through doors till